I want to start with a question, not a complicated one. Just this: what would you do differently if you truly believed that everything was going to work out for you? I'm not asking what you'd do if you had more money, more time, or more connections. I'm asking, what if you lived every day with the deep conviction that no matter what happens, you're on the right path? That everything that feels like a setback is just setting you up for something better. Let me tell you a quick story. A few years ago, I met someone who had just lost their job. They had bills piling up, their confidence was shot, and they were completely uncertain about what came next. But what struck me most wasn't their resume or the situation they were in, it was how they carried themselves. Calm, hopeful, almost confident. I asked how calm right now. They smiled and said, because I've decided to believe that everything always works out for me. I just don't know how yet. That phrase stuck with me, I just don't know how yet. It's not about blind optimism. It's not about ignoring reality. It's about choosing the lens through which you see that reality. When you act as if everything always works out for you, you don't avoid challenges, you face them differently. You don't stop falling, you just fall forward. You don't eliminate fear, but you stop letting it dictate your direction. And people can feel that. When you carry yourself with that kind of belief, others lean in. They trust you more. They want to help. Because confidence rooted in calm is contagious. Now, let me be clear, this mindset doesn't magically fix everything. It doesn't guarantee success on your timeline, but it changes how you move through life. When you believe things are working for you, not to you, you stop chasing outcomes and start building. When we talk about belief, we often think of it as something abstract, an internal thought, or a quiet hope we hold on to. But belief, especially the belief that things will work out, is far more powerful and practical than that. It shapes how we speak, how we walk, how we decide, and ultimately how we live. It's not just something we have, it's something that actively influences our behavior every single day. Think about this: if you genuinely believed that everything in your life was working out in your favor, how would you behave differently? You'd probably stop rushing decisions out of fear. You might be more patient, more open, more willing to take calculated risks. You'd worry less about what others think. You'd stop trying to control every detail and instead trust your instincts more. That belief, quiet, steady, unshakable, would become a foundation for how you show up in the world. Belief doesn't require evidence. In fact, it often shows up before the evidence. That's what makes it so powerful. It gives you permission to act boldly before the path is fully clear. And when you behave like someone who trusts the process, you actually increase the chances that things will work out because your actions start aligning with that outcome. Let's take a simple example. Imagine two people walking into the same job interview. One is nervous, guarded, trying to say all the right things out of fear of rejection. The other walks in calm, confident, not because they're arrogant, but because they genuinely believe that if this opportunity is meant for them, it will happen. If not, something better will come. That second person isn't attached to the outcome, they're connected to their own value. And that belief shapes everything: their posture, tone of voice, how they respond to tough questions, and how memorable they are afterward. Same resume, same qualifications, different belief, different behavior, different result. This concept applies across life. If you believe you're not good enough, that belief leaks into your actions. You speak less in meetings, you pass up opportunities, you don't follow up after that networking event. But if you believe that you're worthy, capable, and that things will eventually fall into place, then you begin to act like someone who belongs in the room. You take initiative. You don't wait to be invited to the table, you bring your own chair. There's a simple psychological principle at play here. What we believe drives what we expect, and what we expect shapes what we do. It's a loop. Your actions reinforce your beliefs, and your beliefs fuel your actions. When you choose to believe that everything always works out for you, you begin to look for evidence of that. You start noticing the connections, the timing, the moments of alignment, and those small confirmations build trust in the belief, so the behavior continues stronger each time. Now, let's be honest, it's not always easy. Life throws curveballs, and sometimes the dots don't connect until much later. But that's exactly when belief matters most. It's easy to act confident when everything is going well. It's far more meaningful when you choose belief in the middle of the unknown. That's when your behavior, your discipline, your kindness, your patience starts reflecting something bigger than your circumstances. And in time, that belief becomes not just something you hold internally, but something people around you can see. You start to live differently. You begin to lead differently. And eventually the world responds to that belief not because you forced it to, but because you behaved as if it would. And it did. There's a big difference between blind optimism and intentional perspective. One ignores reality, the other engages with it differently. When people hear phrases like act as if everything always works out for you, some assume it means pretending things are fine when they're not, or forcing positivity in the face of real struggle. But that's not the point. The point is not to be naive, it's to be deliberate. It's about choosing to see life through a lens that empowers you rather than paralyzes you. Blind optimism says nothing bad will ever happen. Intentional perspective says even when something difficult happens, I'll find a way through it. One is rooted in denial, the other is grounded in resilience. And that distinction matters because the way you choose to see the world changes how you engage with it. When you adopt an intentional perspective, you acknowledge the challenge, but you don't let it define the outcome. You don't ignore the storm. You choose to keep walking anyway. You remind yourself that setbacks are not dead ends. You understand that failure isn't proof that you're off course, it might just be part of the course. And because you're looking through that lens, you respond differently. You think more clearly. You recover faster. You stay focused on what can be done, not just what went wrong. This mindset doesn't require you to fake happiness or pretend that life is perfect. In fact, it requires honesty, real honesty with yourself. You have to look at what's happening and ask, what am I learning from this? What does this make possible? What's still within my control? Perspective is not about what happens to you. It's about what you see and what happens. Two people can experience the same event, losing a job, going through a breakup, missing an opportunity, and come away with entirely different stories. One says, this proves I'm not good enough. The other says, this is opening up space for something better. The circumstances are the same. The story is what changes. And that story determines everything that follows. Choosing intentional perspective is not about pretending to be unaffected. It's about anchoring yourself in something deeper than the present difficulty. It's about reminding yourself that things have worked out before, maybe not the way you expected, but in a way that still moved you forward. And it's about believing that they will again. This doesn't mean you won't feel fear or doubt or sadness. Those emotions are part of being human. The difference is that they don't become the loudest voice in the room. With intentional perspective, you don't let temporary emotion make permanent decisions. You allow yourself to feel, but you don't let those feelings dictate your future. Think about the people you admire not because of what they've achieved, but because of how they've handled difficulty. You'll notice they didn't avoid hardship, they just chose to see something meaningful in it. They stayed open, they stayed steady. And often they came out stronger not because the situation was easy, but because their mindset allowed them to grow through it. That's what an intentional perspective gives you. It gives you clarity in chaos. It gives you direction when the road disappears. And most importantly, it keeps you from shrinking in the face of challenge. You begin to approach problems not with panic, but with purpose. So no, this isn't about blind hope. It's about trained vision. It's about deciding every single day to see life not just as it is, but as it could be. And then walking in that direction with your eyes open, your mind steady, and your heart fully engaged. When we think of confidence, we often imagine someone bold and outspoken, someone who walks into a room and immediately grabs attention. But true confidence isn't always loud. In fact, the deepest kind of confidence often shows up as something much quieter, calm. It's the steady energy of someone who doesn't need to prove anything because they already know who they are and what they bring to the table. This kind of calm confidence is powerful because it's not about external validation. It's not driven by applause or recognition. It doesn't shout, interrupt, or dominate a room. Instead, it listens, observes, and speaks when it matters. There's nothing fragile about it because it doesn't depend on being right or being liked. It comes from within, and because of that, it's harder to shake. People who embody calm confidence don't need to be the center of attention. They're not trying to outshine anyone. Their goal isn't to impress. It's to contribute. They're more focused on impact than image. And when you're around someone like that, you feel it. You feel safe. You feel heard. You feel like you can trust them, even if they say very little. That's the quiet power of calm. Think of the leaders or mentors you've respected most. Chances are it wasn't their volume that stood out, it was their presence. They showed up prepared, they made space for others to speak, and they didn't panic under pressure. That's what confidence looks like when it's rooted in self-awareness rather than ego. Calm confidence is especially important in uncertain situations. When things go wrong, loud confidence often collapses. It relies on certainty and control, and when those disappear, so does the bravado. But calm confidence adapts. It doesn't need all the answers to keep going. It says, we'll figure it out, and it means it. It's not pretending. Everything is perfect, it just isn't afraid of the process. And here's the truth, calm isn't weakness. It's discipline. It takes effort to stay grounded when your instincts want to rush, defend, or react. It takes strength to hold back when you know you could speak louder just to feel heard. But calm doesn't compete. It doesn't posture. It doesn't play games. It trusts that real value speaks for itself even when it speaks softly. You can see this in conversations too. The person who pauses before responding, who listens fully instead of waiting for their turn to talk, who asks thoughtful questions, that's not a lack of confidence. That's someone who doesn't feel the need to dominate because they're secure in their ability to engage meaningfully. They don't need to win the room. They just need to be real in it. This kind of confidence isn't something you're born with, it's something you build. It grows through experience, through failure, through learning how to trust yourself even when things are uncertain. It comes from knowing your values, your limits, your purpose, and it shows in how you carry yourself when no one's watching, not just when you're on stage. The irony is people often misjudge calm confidence at first. It doesn't make a splash. It doesn't chase attention. But over time, it earns deep respect. Because while the loudest voice might grab people in the moment, the calmest presence is what stays with them long after. So if you ever find yourself wondering whether you need to speak up more, perform more, or push harder just to prove you're capable, pause. Ask yourself if you're acting from real confidence or just noise. And then remind yourself, confidence doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be clear, steady, and rooted in who you are. That's what people remember. That's what really leads. In a world that often celebrates flawless results, it's easy to fall into the trap of chasing perfection. We polish our resumes until they shine, delay starting projects until every detail feels just right, and hesitate to speak up unless we're sure we won't make a mistake. But what if perfection isn't the goal? What if it's actually a distraction from something far more meaningful? Purpose. Purpose is messy. It's real. It rarely looks perfect, and that's exactly why it's powerful. When you operate from a place of purpose, you stop measuring your worth by how polished things appear and start focusing on whether you're moving in the right direction. It's not about getting everything right, it's about getting closer to what matters. Perfection is rooted in fear. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of not being enough. It whispers that if things aren't flawless, they're not worth doing. It convinces you to wait, to second guess, to hold back. But while you're perfecting, you're not progressing. You're stuck in the illusion that if you just plan a little longer, prepare a little harder, or control things a little more, then the risk will disappear. But it never does. Purpose, on the other hand, is rooted in intention. It says this might not be perfect, but it's important. It's about contributing, not impressing. Learning, not proving. Building, not performing. When you choose purpose, you accept that imperfections are part of the process. You understand that progress sometimes looks like trying, failing, adjusting, and trying again. And that's okay because you're anchored in something bigger than ego. Some of the most meaningful work in the world didn't come from people who got everything right. It came from people who cared deeply about something and were willing to act before they had it all figured out. They didn't wait for the perfect moment, the perfect words, or the perfect conditions. They started messy, stayed honest, and kept going. This shift in mindset also changes how you see yourself and others. When you're focused on perfection, you compare constantly. You measure your value against created images, highlight reels, and external praise. But when you're focused on purpose, your metric changes. You start asking, am I being authentic? Am I helping someone? Am I growing? That's a far more grounded and fulfilling way to live. Even in leadership, this principle holds true. People don't want perfect leaders. They want human ones, leaders who are willing to admit when they're wrong, ask for input, and show up consistently. Purpose-driven leadership creates trust because it's real. It says, I'm not here to look good. I'm here to make a difference. And that resonates on a deeper level than any perfectly crafted message ever could. Now, this doesn't mean you don't strive for excellence. It simply means you don't let the fear of imperfection stop you from showing up. There's a big difference between doing your best and trying to be perfect. One empowers you, the other exhausts you. One allows you to grow, the other keeps you stuck in a loop of self-doubt. Purpose gives you permission to be a work in progress. It reminds you that your voice matters even if it shakes. That your ideas are valuable even if they're not fully refined. That your efforts count even if the results aren't instant. So instead of asking, is this perfect? Ask, is this aligned? Instead of wondering, will people approve? Ask, is this true to what I believe? And instead of waiting for everything to feel certain, trust that clarity comes from movement, not from stillness. Because at the end of the day, it's not perfection that changes the world. It's people with purpose who are willing to show up imperfect, unfinished, and absolutely committed. You don't have to say a word before people start forming an impression of you. Long before you explain who you are or what you do, others are picking up on something more subtle, your energy. It's not about how loud you are, how charismatic you seem, or how polished your words are. It's about the feeling people get when they're around you. That feeling speaks louder than anything you say. Energy isn't just some vague spiritual concept. It's your body language, your tone, your presence. It's the way you walk into a room, how you make others feel when they're with you. and whether you carry a sense of certainty or hesitation. People might not always be able to describe it, but they feel it and they respond to it, consciously or not. When you believe that things work out for you, that belief shows up in your energy. It doesn't mean you're always smiling or pretending everything is great. It means you carry yourself with a quiet assurance. You're not frantic. You're not desperate. You're not trying to force things or prove your worth. You're just present, grounded, and open. That kind of energy is magnetic. It draws people in, not because you're trying to impress them, but because they feel safe, seen, and respected around you. Think about the last time you interacted with someone who was genuinely calm and confident. They weren't rushing to fill the silence. They weren't trying to dominate the conversation. They listened. They made you feel like your words mattered. That's energy. That's what people remember long after the conversation is over. On the flip side, you've probably also experienced what it's like to be around someone whose energy is anxious, defensive, or uncertain. Even if they said all the right things, something felt off. You sensed the pressure they were under or the fear they were hiding. And whether you realized it or not, it shaped how you responded to them. That's the reality. People mirror your energy. If you bring openness, they feel safe to be open. If you're guarded, they become cautious. If you show up calm and collected in a crisis, others will take their cues from you. Your energy either invites connection or repels it. It either inspires trust or raises suspicion. It either elevates the room or drains it. And this applies in every context: personal relationships, teams, interviews, pitches, even casual conversations. The energy you carry becomes part of your reputation, not the resume version of you, the real-time version. The one that shows up when things don't go according to plan. The one that handles stress. The one that doesn't need everything to be perfect to move forward. But here's the best part: you can choose your energy. It's not about faking confidence or forcing positivity. It's about being intentional, about knowing what you stand for, what you believe in, and what kind of presence you want to bring into the spaces you enter. It starts with awareness, checking in with yourself before you walk into a meeting, a conversation, a new environment, asking, what energy do I want to bring with me today? That small act of self-leadership can change the way others experience you. Ultimately, people don't just follow ideas or credentials. They follow presence. They follow consistency. They follow the energy of someone who knows who they are and moves through the world with quiet conviction. That's what creates influence. That's what builds trust. And that's what leaves a lasting impact, not just because of what you did, but because of how you made people feel while doing IT. One of the biggest illusions that holds people back is the idea that you need to know exactly how everything will work out before you begin. We think we need the perfect plan, the clear path, the step-by-step map that guarantees success. And so we wait, we overthink, we delay our own progress in the name of preparation when really we're just trying to avoid uncertainty. But the truth is, clarity doesn't always come before action. It often comes because of action. You don't need to know the entire how. You just need to start walking. There's something powerful that happens when you move with intention, even if you're unsure of the final destination. Each step reveals something the last one couldn't. You meet people. You gain experience. You hit challenges that teach you more than any amount of planning ever could. Movement itself creates momentum, and that momentum carries you forward into places you couldn't have predicted, let alone planned for. So many people stay stuck because they're waiting for certainty. But life rarely gives you that up front. It gives you questions, nudges, and moments of inspiration. It gives you the next small step, not the whole staircase. And that's enough, because when you take one step, the next one often appears. It's not magic, it's motion. It's proof that progress isn't reserved for those who have it all figured out. It's for those who are willing to keep showing up. Think about the people you admire, not just for what they've achieved, but for how they got there. Most of them didn't start with a perfect strategy. They started with a problem they wanted to solve, a story they wanted to tell, or a change they wanted to be part of. They had a why that pulled them forward, even when the how was unclear. And they figured it out along the way. There's a certain freedom that comes with admitting you don't know exactly how it's going to unfold. It lets you be curious instead of controlling, open instead of rigid. It lets you experiment, adapt, and grow without the pressure of having to be perfect. And ironically, that's often what leads to success, because you're not locked into one narrow idea of what it has to look like. The best journeys are rarely linear. They zigzag. They include detours and wrong turns. But they move. They evolve. And in that movement, you discover things you couldn't have seen from the starting line. That's why walking in faith, trusting that the path will reveal itself as you go, isn't about being reckless. It's about being courageous. Courage, after all, isn't the absence of doubt. It's the willingness to act in spite of it, to keep moving even when your voice shakes, to try again even after things don't go the way you hoped, to believe that forward is still forward, even if it's slower or messier than you imagined. This mindset changes everything. It takes the pressure off needing to have the perfect answer. It shifts your focus from control to curiosity, from needing certainty to building resilience. And in that space, you start to realize that you're more capable than you thought, not because you have all the answers, but because you're willing to keep asking better questions and taking bolder steps. So don't wait for the stars to align. Don't wait for the fear to disappear. Don't wait for someone to hand you a guarantee. Just start walking with belief, with purpose, with the quiet confidence that says, I may not know exactly where this leads, but I trust that every step is teaching me something worth knowing. Because it is. And before long, you'll look back and realize the path didn't just appear, you created it, one step at a time.